Welcome to Sound and Fury. I am Eric Wilfred Watson.
And I'm Hugh Frank, and I'm your boogeyman. That's what I am. I'm here to do whatever I can.
Today we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that would be, drumroll, Star Trek. But just on a whim, for the hell of it, I watched the Star Trek 2009 movie for the first time in a couple of years.
First of the Kelvins.
And I decided that I wanted to do a video on this, even though there's not really anything relevant new to say about it. Everything about this movie has been analyzed to death already. However, I really feel like I have to put my 2 cents into the conversation because just recently in the news, they announced that the next Star Trek movie is officially going to have this crew back.
Yay.
Which was a surprise to the cast of the movie. They said, oh, we're going to be in a new Star Trek movie.
So they didn't know
they found out by seeing it in the news that they're going to be in a new Star Trek movie.
Wow.
But
let me check my contract.
Right? It's like, oh, I think that puts them in a good negotiating position if they don't have a contract.
Yeah, true.
But anyway, I really want to go through what I love and what I don't particularly love about the new Star Trek movie. Now, well, not new, the rebooted universe.
There you go.
Very controversial. Some people absolutely love these movies. Some people think they're not real Star Trek, that they're blasphemy against the memory of Gene Roddenberry. And then most Star Trek fans probably are in between. Count me as the in between, leaning towards liking them.
Yeah.
But I want to go through this in nerd level detail, and I'm dragging you along for the ride.
Cool. Well, I have two favorite things about the movie.
What's that?
Thor and R2-D2.
Well, that's right, Captain
Kirk?
Yes. Captain Kirk's, or the first Captain Kirk is Captain
Kirk's father, Captain Kirk.
Yes. Before he was Thor.
Yes. Well, imagine after he crashed that spaceship into the other spaceship, he was probably pretty Thor. Yeah.
And then R2-D2 in the rubble for about 1/10 of 1 second.
Yep.
But I have some notes here that I typed up on my phone and then I put on actual paper and printed.
We have the technology to...
Yes.
I'm going to kind of go through the movie more or less in order and talk about things that I'm going to talk about whether you want me to or not. Please subscribe.
Shall we begin?
So, the opening sequence that you were just joking about with Thor sacrificing his life.
Yes.
Fantastic opening scenes. Establishes the aesthetic of the universe, the USS Kelvin, which is why they named it the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah. Which is JJ Abrams' grandpa?
I don't recall, but he has something Kelvin in every movie.
Yeah, I think it's his grandpa.
He mentions Kelvin in Star Wars, too.
Kelvin Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's or one of his relatives.
But the interior of the ship is supposed to be the same. Now, for those that don't know or don't fully remember or understand, the whole concept of the movie is, at this point, history diverges into two branches. Branch number one is all the Star Trek you've ever seen before. Branch number two is the minute this movie starts, there's a time travel thing that creates an alternate reality. But up until that point, it's the same reality, the same universe, and then it branches off. At least that's the idea.
Right.
There's debate about that, but I think that's creatively what they're attempting to do.
It's a multiverse. I mean, it was explained in Avengers Endgame fairly well, but it wasn't really.
But the time travel nitpickiness is something I want to get to later. But when the movie starts, at that point, it's supposed to be a prequel to the original series. And the aesthetic of it does that well, while they simultaneously make it look like our future, but less advanced than something from the 60s. So they have physical buttons and knobs. They have more of an industrial feel. There's like steel barriers and like a plastic tarp between the ship and the shuttlecraft. And interesting little touches like that make it seem more lived in and real. And it's a great emotional sequence where George Kirk saves his family, and the music that they play when he's about to die, very emotional, very well done.
Sweetheart, can you hear me? I love you so much. I love you.
He's dead, Joe.
one of the best opening sequences of any Star Trek, of any iteration ever.
Yeah.
And I think they start off the movie perfectly. And then the rest of the movie happens. What else do I have on my notes here about this?
And this is the shit I hate.
Yes. Nero's ship is kind of pointy and weird looking, and I don't think I like the look of it.
It should be more industrial looking, because it is an industrial ship.
It's supposed to be a mining ship. It's not supposed to be a weapon of war or like something from the shadows of Babylon 5.
It did look, that's what it reminded me of. It's like one of the Babylon 5 shadows.
Looks a little bit like Shinzon's ship in Nemesis. So I think that's what they're going for, is like, what's the next logical progression from Shinzon's ship? But I didn't like Shinzon's ship either.
Well, and all those look an awful lot like the Zerg from StarCraft, too. So, I don't know. Whatever.
Things I like about the movie, I'm not going to be overly negative, although I have a lot of criticisms. I'm going to try not to be overly negative, because I do think the movie is a good movie overall.
Yeah.
The music is wonderful, and it's growing on me over the years. Michael Giacchino, the composer, perfect. I still think I prefer the Jerry Goldsmith Star Trek music, but he does a perfect job in this. And he's done a shitload of other things. He scored a lot of the Marvel movies, all 3 of the Spider-Man movies, modern Spider-Mans.
Okay.
He's going to do the Batman score. Very prolific composer. Love that he did all 3 of the Kelvin timeline movies. Wouldn't have changed that.
Probably will do the 4th, I'm guessing.
I hope so. I really do.
All right.
Movie after the opening credits, well, not credits, but like the title card, we have Star Trek. You get the
You're making fun of Star Trek more than I am at this particular time, which actually reminds me of an episode of Star Trek. Anyway, just kidding.
But no, after the title card, you get the juxtaposition between young Kirk and young Spock. And again, I think they do that extremely well. Brash young Captain Kirk is, and again, he's not growing up in the same childhood situation he would have grown up.
A shameless Nokia plug.
Well, in the original timeline, he grew up with a mother and a father in a stable household. Now, apparently, his stepdad's kind of a jerk. At least that's the impression you get.
Got a very old Corvette.
Yeah. So he has a different childhood than he otherwise would have. So naturally, that's going to create a little bit of a different personality. And I don't mind that at all. Spock grows up just like Spock did. Very logical.
No.
Very unpleasant looking school system.
Or whatever, right?
Now, this is something a lot of non-nerds don't know, but there's an animated series from the 1970s that was something that you can watch if you're a diehard Star Trek fan. Not where I'd recommend people start watching Star Trek.
If you can make it through that, you can make it through anything.
Yeah, right. But
It's like
there's
starting Star Wars with the holiday special.
pretty much. But there's one episode though that's excellent, even though the animation is shit. The story is just wonderful.
It's the one where Spock draws a pentagram on the floor.
No, that's one of the other episodes that are just so silly. It's yeah.
Then his Congress.
Oh, there's so many good stuff about the animated series. Actually, I'd love to hate
So
that.
it's campy. It's
yeah.
Okay.
But no, one episode is actually stand out above the rest called Yesteryear. And that's when time travel stuff happens and then nobody recognizes Spock. It's like, who's that? Well, Spock died when he was a kid. So they go back, Spock goes back in time to prevent his own death. And he sees young himself. He passes himself off as like a distant cousin or whatever.
Okay.
You are of my family.
My name is Selleck.
But there's one sequence in that cartoon where 3 Vulcans are bullying Spock for being human and emotional.
You could never be a true Vulcan. That is not true. Your father brought shame to Vulcan. He married a human. You haven't even mastered a simple Vulcan neck pinch yet, Earther.
And they copy that almost exact scene in the movie.
He's a traitor, you know. Your father, for marrying her, that human whore.
And I think that is a brilliant, deep-cut nerd thing to do.
That's cool. Okay. You really get rewarded for watching that.
Yes. So if you're not a Star Trek fan, it works perfectly as a scene that sets up the conflict where he's half human, has that issue with his heritage, living amongst Vulcans, but having a human mother, and the Vulcans kind of being racist against him when he's going into the Vulcan Science Academy. They call his human mother a liability or disadvantage. So he has that sort of conflict, and they play that really, really well in this movie.
I had no idea. That's pretty cool.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I also dug the RoboCop guy. When Captain Kirk's car goes off the cliff and they have this robot cop show up, like, citizen, what is your name? Kind of makes me want to know about the 23rd century law enforcement, if there's supposed to be more or less a utopian world with very little crime.
It reminded me of THX 1138, actually.
Yeah, I guess. You know, I like little snippets of Earth in Star Trek. It's supposed to be space. It's supposed to be alien planets. And I don't want them to overdo Earth on Star Trek. I want to see space. But it is nice to just get those little glimpses. Yeah. And you can fill in the blanks with your imagination. And it's fun to just have that one extra little element that they have these RoboCop guys.
Yeah. Well, and you either have to go in one extreme direction, like Firefly, where you talk about the Earth that was, or you have to touch base with Earth every now and again just to see what's going on, to establish that it's still there. So.
And well, if Starfleet takes place on Earth, headquarters is on Earth, you obviously have to show San Francisco, but if they just show the Starfleet headquarters, that's not really giving you an idea of what Earth is like. That's just a military office building. It's like going to the Pentagon. You don't really get to see what society's like if you're just in the Pentagon.
Yeah.
But
even when cars fly, we still have a bridge, because I guess they just
which alternates between solar panels and a train.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, like most things do.
Then the famous bar fight sequence where Kirk is kind of hitting on Uhura, and then other cadets come in and there's a brawl, and imagine like military cadets in a bar. Probably a fist fight isn't the most unrealistic thing to happen, but there's a couple things that bug me about this sequence, and the whole idea of Starfleet having an outpost in Iowa in the first place. I think the logic, according to the writers, was something along the lines of she's a duck, therefore she's made of wood and heavier than a witch. Or how does that how does that go again?
It floats, therefore is heavier or lighter than a duck. It is therefore made of wood, and therefore a witch.
Yeah. So in this case, Captain Kirk works for Starfleet. Captain Kirk is from Iowa, therefore Starfleet is in Iowa. Which is dumb.
Yeah, it is.
Especially
when you stretch it out to make it work, it works. But just it's not organic.
JJ Abrams wanted to have his Star Wars young Luke Skywalker looking at the two sons of Tatooine moment, where he's gazing off at the Enterprise that he's going to one day command. Yeah. That was shoehorned in there, and it doesn't work.
And they were building it in Iowa.
What especially doesn't work though is,
you know what? It was built in the middle of a cornfield because they knew if they built it, he would come.
Oh, yeah. Spaceships always land in cornfields, too.
Yes, they do. Is this heaven? No, it's Starfleet.
Well, here's another thought. They have Budweiser in this bar, too. Now,
3 Budweiser Classics.
Yes, they do.
Well, if money doesn't exist, who the hell's running the Budweiser plant? They're not paying them. And that's another interesting little fill in the blank in your head, because
And why do they have Nokia phones?
You know that there's no money, but there's still people going to work. So there's got to be some work reward system. But
maybe that's part of the whole pissing on Gene Roddenberry's legacy is
product placement ads.
I mean, that's, if you think about it, his idea of a utopian society was you work just for the benefit of the satisfaction that work brings you, and they brought back real, actual economics to it. Where
one of these days, I could go through a whole nerd video about the economics of Star Trek.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and I would have some things to say about that. But again, I hope they never really explain it too much. I don't want to know how the future economics work.
Well, see, they're working for midichlorians.
Right. No, but going back to Iowa. Now, he gets in the shuttle. He gets in the shuttle and flies to Starfleet Academy. On the shuttle, he meets Bones, which is kind of a cute little scene. He's like, "Careful, I might throw up on you." The Karl Urban? Mm-hmm. Where did you meet Karl Urban?
At a comic convention. It was actually really cool, but I was starstruck. He's like, "Hey, so you having a good time?" I'm like, So yeah, I was kind of, he was nice. I was kind of a jerk. Yeah, I didn't really say much to him because I couldn't.
Perfect as Judge Dredd.
Yes, I agree.
But he's worried about going into space. He's like, why would you need to go in space if you're flying from Iowa to San Francisco?
Jim Kirk. McCoy. Leonard McCoy.
Also, what in the name of were Uhura and McCoy doing in Iowa in the first place? Uhura is a Swahili speaker, which means that she's from sort of Central Eastern Africa. Bones is from somewhere in the American South. There's no reason in the world they would need to go to Iowa. They weren't involved in building the Enterprise. They weren't involved in shipbuilding. She's a linguist. He's a doctor. They're both cadets going into the academy.
It could be a stretch that he would be there because you always need a doctor on any post.
Yeah, but that wasn't where he was posted. He was joining the academy, and he had a layover in Iowa for no reason.
Yeah, why would you have layovers when
the reason
you have transporters in space?
The reason he was there was so that he could meet Captain Kirk on the shuttle. Mm-hmm. And it makes no sense. Mm-hmm. But it's a nitpick, that jumps right the hell out at me. And
yeah, it's stuff that I hadn't thought about, but now that I think of it, it's irrefutable. So, yeah. They all should have met in San Francisco, is what you're saying.
Right, exactly. Right. There's just there's no reason for them to have been there in the first place.
Yeah, or even somewhere else where they would stop. I mean, nobody stops in Iowa.
Especially if you live in Iowa.
Well, I mean, like, it's not like a tourist destination or whatever.
It was for me. I went to Riverside, Iowa to see the Star Trek shit there.
Well,
I did.
Yeah, I don't think they were Star Trek fans, though. But, like, hey, this is the future birthplace of, oh, wait, this guy in the bar. But like, if they met in, like, Tahiti or something, or, someplace tropical, if a location other than San Francisco would still be cool. Mm-hmm. Just not in the middle of middle America. Like, I don't know. This doesn't make sense.
Again, here's something else. Again, nitpicky. It doesn't really interfere with the flow of the movie, but it just every single time. That is how.
Tell us how you really feel.
That is how Captain Pike describes Starfleet to Jim Kirk. Enlist in Starfleet. Oh, you guys must be down on your recruiting quota for the month. You don't enlist to be an officer.
No.
You
can enlist and then go green to gold and become an officer, and there's officer candidacy school and all that kind of stuff. But no, you don't enlist to become an officer. You are commissioned.
Not only that, but you apply to the academy. It's right. Joining Starfleet is like saying I'm joining the Army, to use an analogy.
Right. And
that's not the same thing as I'm joining the Army and then you're automatically at West Point.
Enlist in Starfleet.
It's hard to get in.
Yeah, it is. You need some kind of backer, some kind of like high political person to basically say, hey, this person should be a cadet here.
Yeah, but Pike refers to him as, do you want to be the only genius level repeat offender in the Midwest? Repeat offender meaning he has a criminal record at that point. Right. You can't just walk onto a military base.
One does not simply walk into Starfleet.
Other thing they get terribly wrong is how he describes Starfleet. He says, you know what the Federation is, right? It's a peacekeeping and humanitarian armada.
You understand what the Federation is, don't you? It's important. It's a peacekeeping and humanitarian armada.
We done?
No, that's not what the Federation is. That's what Starfleet is. The Federation is the government of society. That's like describing the Navy. It's like confusing the Navy and the country that the Navy is for. Yeah. As somebody who's in that organization isn't going to make that mistake. It's just clunkily written.
But he needed to explain it to the audience.
You could just swap the word Federation for Starfleet. You know what Starfleet is, right? It's a humanitarian and peacekeeping armada. Cool, right. That's a description of that branch of the government.
You have been recruited by Captain Pike to join the Starfleet and defend the frontier against the Romulan Armada.
It's a small thing, but Starfleet and the Federation are two distinctly different ideas.
Yeah.
No, and the writers just missed that, and everybody who edited the movie just missed that.
I'm right there with you.
But once Kirk gets to the academy, then the movie starts going well again. I am a big fan. I mean, I never really understood what's wrong with fan service. I think fan service is fine. And the Kobayashi Maru, seeing Kirk actually defeat the test, brilliant. Eating the apple just to look a little bit more cocky. Yeah. The conflict between him and Spock, their first meeting doesn't go well. And the juxtaposition of McCoy actually liking Spock at first, like when they're famously antagonistic towards each other. It's like, I don't know, but I like him.
Yeah.
Really well done. I would have loved to have seen more of that, but it got cut short by the... they bring Kirk up on charges. They have the distress call from Vulcan so that the movie can happen.
Yeah.
And
so much of it was just... He's meant to sit in this seat, and there needs to be conflict where it looks like he's not going to get there.
Yeah.
But we're just going to shove him in there anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen more of the Starfleet Academy bit, but the movie can't really linger there too long because we have to get him to be Captain Kirk as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But the emergency on Vulcan happens, so they do get summoned to Vulcan. The rest of the fleet is off in the Laurentian system for unknown reasons. So the only people that can respond to this disaster is the Starfleet cadets. So they all scramble to board ships.
There's so many movies like that where it's just the fresh ones that can go out and fight the fight or whatever. It's just that's way overused. Anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're right. The idea that Earth being a core member of a founding world of the Federation and Vulcan being right there along with them as a founding member, that the only ships available were the cadets.
Yeah.
They had no planetary defenses or anything. They're just, nope, we got to send all the Starfleet cadets to an earthquake. They didn't say a ship attacking. Kirk had to logically deduce it so that he could become first officer for no reason. Really clunky plotting there.
Yeah.
Another piece of clunky plotting that does not work for me is how quickly they get to Vulcan. They're just warp speed, boom, they're there.
Did they get there in less than 12 parsecs?
Yes, they made the trip in less than 12 parsecs.
Only the Millennium Falcon can do that, so I see where you're coming from.
So when they get there, basically Sulu forgot to take off the parking brakes, so they're a little bit late and warping in. I kind of like the introduction of Sulu and Chekhov.
Wait a minute. When they get there, all the other ships have been destroyed, so they're not the only ones that can go there.
Well, the reason that they're not destroyed along with them is because Sulu messed up and didn't warp right along with everybody else.
Right.
Because they were delayed a little bit.
But the rest of the fleet was already there.
Yes, because they all warped ahead and got destroyed as soon as they got there.
The first part we were talking about.
No, all the cadets that warped in got destroyed. So they basically Nero wiped out all of Starfleet Academy.
Oh. Wipe them out. All of them. So basically, so Nero was kind of the Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, so all of those ships that you see warping towards Vulcan get destroyed, except for the Enterprise, because they're a little bit later showing up.
And they're all cadets. It's not just the cadets on the Enterprise.
Yes.
I missed that. Okay.
Well, yeah, like Uhura's originally going to go to the Farragut and complain and says, I want to be on the Enterprise. So all those other ships launched.
Whoops.
And they have the sequence where the ships are warping, pew, 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 and then the Enterprise just doesn't, and they make a joke. Did you forget to take off the parking brake?
Yeah.
Commander. Cadet Kirk, you somehow managed to install and activate a subroutine in the programming code, thereby changing the conditions of the test.
So, here's another plot hole. Fast forwarding to the end of the movie, when Kirk gets when he gets his medal and captain of the and he becomes captain of the Enterprise, that same auditorium is filled with Starfleet cadets again that somehow aren't dead.
We're not dead. Yeah. Well, they just moved everybody up a year.
I guess that must be what it is.
They all got bumped up. Everybody got promoted. They just went to Iowa and recruited some more second-time offenders.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So here's another thing.
But when they warped in, by the way, that was when R2-D2 was there.
Yep, he is floating amongst the rubble.
Yes.
2 seconds after they leave, Chekhov gives his little speech and says that they will arrive at planet Vulcan in 3 minutes.
We should be arriving at Vulcan within 3 minutes.
They left Earth 30 seconds ago, but they're going to arrive at Vulcan in 3 minutes. So I did some checking to see how far Vulcan was.
Oh, boy. 'Cause
I'm a nerd.
Boy.
It's never said on screen exactly how many light years it is, but in Star Trek IV, when they warp from Vulcan to Earth to stand trial on their stolen Klingon ship, they refer to it as a short trip, which is fine. But after they've been in space for a while, Sulu says we should arrive at Earth in 1.6 hours. 3 minutes is just a little too fast for an interplanetary trip, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, unless they're going warp a billion. Which, after warp 10, you go back in time, so...
Yes, according to a Voyager episode, warp 10 is basically where the infinite improbability drive kicks in, and you're at all places of the universe at once. Here's something you probably didn't know about Chekhov. It's a different character than in the original timeline. And I literally mean a different character. Because when Captain Kirk was born, when Nero traveled back in time, he changed history from that point forward. Chekhov was born in a different year in the new timeline. So if your parents boinked in a different date, it's not the same sperm, it's not the same egg, it's not the same person. Maybe you would have named the kid the same thing, but it's not the same person.
Right.
In the original timeline, the original Chekhov was born in 2245. In the new timeline, Chekhov was born in 2241. They needed to do that so he could be on the Enterprise earlier because they moved everything up, where Captain Kirk takes command at a younger age. But they wanted the younger characters there too, so they changed his birthday, and he's a different person. So that's something that is just nerdy in the extreme.
So they basically had a list of people they wanted there, and they just had him checked off.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah. Engineering looks like shit in this.
How do you really feel?
It's a brewery.
It is a brewery.
We live in Wisconsin,
right.
And
the whole scene about Scotty doing the oompa loompa doompa. What do you get when you drink too much beer? It's, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah.
No, I mean, it's a Budweiser brewing plant, and of course that's why they had the Budweiser product placement earlier in the movie.
Of course, because St. Louis and Iowa are not terribly far away from each other.
No, but I mean, I live in Wisconsin. I've been to the Miller Brewery tour a couple times because they give you free beer, and I lived in Milwaukee, so why wouldn't I do that?
No.
So I know what a brewery looks like. And the second those tanks came on screen, it's like, oh my God, they're in a brewery. But even, they just put like a nuclear symbol on the brewery tank, on the beer tank. So what's supposed to be in those things? It's just, that's the antimatter storage, and we need these gigantic... red brick floors and cement in engineering. It's a starship. You don't need red brick floors, cement, rusted steel beams, and it just does not look anything like the inside of a spaceship. They also have a sequence where they're running through the brewery, and they have like a crane shot where they're looking down as they're running across this ramp, but it's so high up. The idea that there's that much open space inside of a starship is also asinine, especially if that's supposed to be just engineering. It's like the whole interior is like bigger than the ship.
Right.
It's just so bad. It pulls me out of the movie every single time. And I don't like it.
I got that impression.
But the Scotty character...
Snotty.
He's fine.
Yeah, I like Scotty. I like the way he... I simultaneously liked and disliked the way he learned his own principle to do the whole across the
transwarp beaming
kind of thing. I didn't like that Spock told him about it because then that's the whole it's the concept of original thought, right? If I go back in time and tell Marconi how to invent a radio. Who really invented the radio, right? Actually, it's Nikola Tesla.
This is an alternate timeline, so it's not the same Chekhov, or not the same Scotty.
I guess. But, whatever. It's so that rubbed me the wrong way.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
Kirk's rise to command is so shoehorned. Again, it pulls me out of the movie every single time. Yeah. Pike puts Spock in command, which makes sense. Spock is by this point a commander. Right. Logically, it would make sense that he'd be in command if Pike was out, but to promote Kirk as his first officer, when Kirk hasn't graduated from the academy yet, and is on academic probation or some such double secret probation or whatever it is from his cheating scandal that was yet unresolved. The idea that there's got to be at least 1 or 2 commissioned officers on the ship that would be ahead of him in line.
Right.
But not, I mean, maybe in an extreme crisis, they would have been able to finagle some plot reason where he would have been able to do that. But to let him keep the ship at the end is even less plausible.
He can't be the rebel, the ne'er-do-well, and also be the captain, or on his way to becoming the captain. You have to have a different story to install him, and then he can go on to get with all the green girls.
But the movie wanted to do Starfleet Academy, and it wanted to do Kirk takes command of the Enterprise, but that's 3 years isn't enough time for that. A decade at minimum, you would think. I mean, how quickly can somebody become a captain in the U.S. Navy?
Right.
3 years from going into the academy to not even graduating to being given captain of the naval USS Enterprise?
And not to mention, too, that when you start down a path to becoming a naval officer, you've wanted to be a naval officer for a not that kind of naval. You've wanted to be a naval officer for a long time, and chances are you had model boats.
Ship in the oh, good Lord. Didn't anybody here build ships in bottles when they were boys?
I did not play with toys.
I was never a boy.
And did stuff on the water in your own boat, and there's all the stuff that you have a lifetime before you get to the academy with experience with whatever.
Ships and bottles? It's great fun.
I mean, this was just a kid from Iowa that had never really been in a spaceship before, and
his dad was in the service, but he didn't care about that.
Right. I mean, the only thing we know that he drove was a car off a cliff. So, so the whole idea of, I mean, not that your experience prior to joining the military has such a profound impact, but it kind of does, in that you learn certain things in life that propel you in that direction.
Well, look at the Wesley Crusher character. He spent his entire life wanting to be in Starfleet, and he failed his entrance exam to Starfleet Academy.
Who's that?
Wesley Crusher.
Oh, yeah.
Captain Picard failed his entry exam. Now, going back to things that are good in the movie, Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy is just golden in everything he does. Him being in the movie gives it a level of authenticity that it might have been lacking if it was just a hard reboot. A classic Star Trek character gives it this is real Star Trek kind of gravitas to it.
Right.
And all of the dialogue he delivers in this movie is perfectly acted, perfectly done. And I'm really glad that he was in the movie. Unfortunately, almost everything that he was given to say was dumb.
Well, and it's in typical JJ Abrams fashion. They took the classic character, the one and only classic character in the movie, and made him suck.
I wouldn't go that far with this.
Kind of like how the one and only classic character truly that had any screen time in Force Awakens, Han Solo, basically was a failed alcoholic father and sucked up until the end and then died.
It's all true.
And then you have Luke and Leia end up just all being failures or whatever by the end. You take the original characters and just make them suck. So they had to do that with Spock too. That's just what he does, apparently. JJ Abrams.
I don't think they ruined this because Spock stayed Spock-like the whole movie, so they didn't change or ruin the character. Spock stayed Spocky.
But it was his fault that the whole timeline got disrupted, and basically he screwed the whole thing up because he...
Well, the plot contrivances to put young Kirk with old Spock were dumb.
Yes.
On multiple levels dumb. First of all, jettisoning Kirk off the ship instead of just throwing him in the brig.
Right.
Get him off my ship. Well, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
They launch him down to a planet. He happens to land exactly where Spock is with no pre-planning.
Of course.
Imagine...
Wasn't there a monster that Spock saved him from?
Yes. So that there could be...
Exactly the right time?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Spock...
So wouldn't launching somebody to be isolated on an icy planet with killer monsters be tantamount to murder?
Well, like I said, it's kind of a dumb plot point. Well, there's a Starfleet outpost nearby, I guess, but you have to travel through
where Snotty is.
Yeah. Why didn't the pod land there? Did the escape pod have no guidance system, or they just
piloted by R2D2 and C3PO?
It's got no life forms aboard. Now, the mind meld, where Spock gives an exposition mind meld to young Kirk, the idea is that a supernova was going to destroy the galaxy, which wouldn't happen. A supernova is one exploding star.
Yeah.
But the solution was to put red matter, which I guess would create a black hole. I don't know what red matter is. Nobody does. But if you put a black hole to absorb a supernova, how is Romulus any less that way?
Yep. Well, and the other, there's that too. Also, if you only need a drop of red matter, why in the do you have a 55-gallon drum of it in your little ship? Because if one drop can create a black hole, what in the 55 gallons of it do? And if it's got that much gravity or that much mass or whatever to it, how do you contain, like I could see theoretically or whatever.
Because it looks cool.
I guess.
I agree with you. It just doesn't make any sense. But here's more stuff that doesn't make sense. They refer to the planet that they're on, or moon or whatever it is, as Delta Vega. Delta Vega is not clearly established as what it is. Is it another planet in the same star system? Is it a different star system? But you can see Vulcan clearly from the surface of Delta Vega. Spock watches Vulcan get destroyed. Vulcan in the sky is proportionally bigger than the moon is in our real-life sky. So it would have to be in the same star system.
It would have to be basically a moon of
Vulcan. But they've also... Vulcan has no moon. That's been established in Star Trek before. Station. That's no space station.
That's no moon.
So it would have to be... They have to retcon that it's not. It has to be moon. That's the only way you could see it, because if it was
maybe after that they misplaced it and it became Lost Vega.
Yeah, but
that's a gamble.
If it was another planet, like if you think about Mars from Earth, it's just a dot in the sky, no different from the other stars in the sky.
Yeah.
If Vulcan had another nearby planet that was,
literally, if Mars imploded, we would just look out in the night sky and see.
Yep.
Most people wouldn't even notice. I mean,
but they wanted to have the dramatic moment where you see the planet crumbling in on itself. But that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
But I can live with that. It's not the worst thing. There's plenty of other plot contrivances and dumb things that are worse than that. But it just
it's just sad that some of the major plot holes aren't that bad because they're not as bad as the other. It's
just another turd on the pile of shit that messes this movie up.
Just another turd on the pile.
Now, the plot of the movie itself, the revenge plot is fine. The story works as a story. It's not brilliant. It's not terrible. It's a revenge story.
If you want to watch a good revenge Star Trek movie,
there's
Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It works for the action adventure, but it's not overly memorable. I don't think that's why anybody watches the movie. They watch it because of the characters. But I do want to talk about, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to nitpick the time travel aspect of this. Up until this point, every single time they have shown time travel, they have shown it as like Back to the Future rules, where it's the one timeline.
Yes.
If you go back in time and change something, you erase the future and create a new future in its place. That happened on one classic example would be yesterday's Enterprise, where something happens different in the past. We go to war with the Klingons.
Oh, it was the Kittimer thing or something, right?
Well, that was Star Trek 6, but yeah, the Enterprise C shows up, and because the Enterprise C is not there to defend the Klingons,
there was Worf's family died or whatever.
I'm mixing up a couple different things. But,
I am, okay.
But the point being is that the timeline changed and that they changed it back.
Right.
Other examples of that, I mean, they have the Department...
in First Contact.
Perfect example. They change history so the Federation never gets created in the first place.
Right.
However, in this case, this is the only time where it's created an alternate reality. They don't really establish that in the movie. Until Star Trek Picard came out, there was really a lot of fan opinion that the classic Star Trek didn't exist anymore.
I could come up with a theory. So if you have two timelines, right? Mm-hmm. One is where the heroes were not able to fix it, and the other timeline is where they were. So all the other movies we've seen have just been where they've been able to fix the timeline. So the alternate reality's always been created, but we only see the one where they went back and fixed it and kept that line going straight. But that other one goes off anyway.
And that was your problem with it too, is all the other time travel things, they fix the problem and save the day.
That was my nitpick with it too. So now I'm using my nitpick to counteract your nitpick.
I understand creatively why they did it though, because they wanted to be able to create new Star Trek without worrying about all the mountains of canon that come along with it. And they don't want to have to worry about contradicting some throwaway line in episode 27 of whatever show that some nerd like me is going to go on YouTube and bitch about.
But they couldn't have just Spock go on from the point where he was naturally and just continue on and meet a whole new crew and have Star Trek movies, like that. But anyway, whatever.
And they did fix it with one line of dialogue in Discovery where they mentioned alternate realities and whatnot.
Oh yeah, somebody from the Kelvin timeline.
They did specifically establish that that it is a branch. Now, I guess when you travel through time, you can either create a new alternate reality or you can change your current. I guess it depends on how you travel through time. I guess if you slingshot around the sun, you go back in your own timeline.
There you go.
If you go through a black hole, you could create an alternate universe.
Right.
Neither thing is even remotely scientifically plausible, but hey, what the
Right. But I kind of like and I just developed it on the fly though, that simultaneously.
Great Scott!
So simultaneously, both things are happening. You're both succeeding and failing, and that's why you have the two timelines. One has fixed it, one has not.
Did you notice that? What's the Doc Brown actor name? The real life actor.
Christopher Lloyd.
Thank you. Christopher Lloyd gives people time machines, both Star Trek and Back to the Future.
Oh yeah,
because they steal the Klingon ship to go back in time.
The Bounty.
They go warp 8.8 or 88 miles an hour.
Is that what happened?
No. But basically in conclusion, even though I spent most of the movie bitching about Star Trek 2009, it works as a movie. It's genuinely fun to watch. It's extremely well shot. The pacing is really good.
Except for all the stuff we just spent the last hour pointing out. It's pretty good.
It works as a fun action-adventure story, and that's not a bad thing. Star Trek is allowed to be action-adventure. As much as it's known for being more ethereal or heady or high concept, the first episode that got picked up by the network, Kirk is in a fist fight. I mean, it's always had lasers and shooting people and fist fights. It's always been action oriented. It's just we're just better at doing it with modern filmmaking technology, and that's not a bad thing.
Budgets and stuff too. That was part of the reason they had transporters, because the special effects of doing the transporter was cheaper than having shuttlecraft. So that was how it was marketed.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reusable sets and stuff too.
So, I like the movie. It is really well done. It just has a lot of plot points that are just really bad. But the good news on those is they go by so quickly, you almost don't notice how dumb it is.
Come watch Star Trek. It's the dumb parts go by so quickly, you don't know how dumb they are.
If I were to be able to go back in time and change how they made these movies, I think it would have been better if they would have done just a Kirk takes command of the Enterprise movies and maybe had a flashback or two of 10, 15 years ago when he was in the Academy, something back then becomes relevant now. Right. But have an adventure where he first takes command in an emergency and make a exciting movie about that. You can't really have him take command of the ship in 3 years. It just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. You know, it does remind me of another episode of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah?
When Q brings Picard back to show him what his life would be like if he lived life less dangerously.
Tapestry.
Yeah. So there was a fast track and a slow track to becoming a captain or whatever, and I guess he never did become a captain in the alternate or whatever. Was that the one, the Domjot one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you play Domjot, you man. But anyway, yeah, that's that one. He's still an ensign like 30 some years later. Kind of like how Tom Cruise is still a lieutenant in the new Top Gun movie 40 years later. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But having that vehicle to say, this is what would have happened had you made this choice differently. But realistically, had Kirk decided to make the choices he made, he wouldn't have been the captain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that story should have gone. But to shoehorn him back into the captain's seat.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to have a theme of destiny and whatnot, but it works as an action-adventure movie. It doesn't really work much beyond that.
Density.
But it does the characters well. They're basically hyper-supercharged versions of the characters, but they're the characters, especially McCoy. Karl Urban he's just awesome. Eerily perfect as Dr. McCoy. Zachary Quinto is just wonderful as Spock. Chris Pine, I didn't really care for as Kirk so much, but he grew on me, and by the time Star Trek Beyond was over, I bought him as Captain Kirk. Yeah. And the smaller rolled characters, Chekhov, Sulu. Unfortunately, Chekhov's not going to be back. That was his tragic dying way too young.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan of the Kelvin universe. A lot of Star Trek fans despise them for all the reasons I just analyzed to death. But I think the enjoyment of the movies outweighs even a big pile of nitpicks because it is a fun movie and it's done well. And
sometimes you just have to let the art flow over.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Although there was a starship run entirely by cadets in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which was a pretty good episode. So
They have their own ship.
I've heard of cadets getting command of a runabout or a shuttle, but not a starship.
And Star Trek Prodigy is a cartoon about kids running a starship. So considering a photon torpedo is more powerful than a nuclear weapon, that might be a bad idea, but that's...
Well,
That's another thing. Kirk, 3 years to get command. The Starship Enterprise is a weapon of mass destruction.
More or less.
You wouldn't give it to a three-year academy dropout. Or,
yeah, which he basically was at that point. He was about to get dropped out. Yeah.
But anyway...
I get dropped out, but I get in again. You're going to put me in the chair. I get dropped out.
But no, I have similar notes for Star Trek Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond, so we will, whether you like it or not, do episodes on those in the very near future. And I think it would be fun to go back and make similar nitpicks to all the Star Wars movies and a whole bunch of other pieces of fiction. There's so much material out there to dive into. So if you want to catch all of it, please hit the subscribe button. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching. We really do appreciate it. Share this video and help us grow this channel.
Yes, and hello Star Trek Darkness, my old friend.
Across the universe.
On the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk.
You will die. Your people will die. JJ Abrams will die. You will all die.